Hi. So one of the things that is very common is to get a lot of groin pain through here. There are reasons for groin pain, all kinds of reasons. It could be a hernia, it could be coming from the lower back, but very often it's a tight hip flexor. Now, hip flexors is a muscle that does this, that brings the knee up. And of course, the way that most of you know how to stretch hip flexors is the forward lunge. The forward lunge is something like this. This way around, of course, I'd be stretching the left, the back hip flexor. That's under tension. Now, the important thing in the lunge is to also add in the core to try to roll the tailbone, the coccyx down and the pubis up. As soon as I do that, I put that quad under stretch because I'm lifting the pelvis, anterior, inferior iliac spine, and stretching that quad and also the hip flexor. I'll show you that from the other way around. So the lunge that people know about is this. Of course, you can't see it this way around. People do lunges this way around, a lunge like this, a nice long stance. That's a lunge stance, and it's going into the back hip flexor to here, the runner's lunge. However, I'm going to show you what's called the reclining hero pose, which is the way to work on both groins together. And I'm using a setup a little bit like this because it's lying back. So I sit up some bricks and a bolster. That bolster is not quite long enough for me, so I need a little bit of support for the head. So that's what I'm going to recline back on, because someone like me, I'm never going to get all the way back. And one of the problems with the reclining hero pose, you don't want too much back bend because that can be problematic for the lower back. If we think about where the hip flexor goes from the lesser trochanter of the femur here up into the lumbar vertebral bodies, all lumbar vertebral bodies, transverse processes. If you have a lumbar lordosis and this exaggerated curve in the back, it's usually because the hip flexor is tight anyway, and what else is going on is probably the core could be a lot stronger. That can happen if you're sitting all day long, if you're driving a lot, because you're in a sitting position, this muscle will shorten. The psoas, iliopsoas. It's what I call a default core muscle. If the core is not strong, then these muscles have to do the core work, because there's nothing else that's going to support the trunk together with the hamstrings and the glutes. The glutes can become hypertonic, or particularly the piriformis can become hypertonic, gets very tired. The equal and opposite muscle, the antagonist muscle, is the hip flexor. So we're going to stretch out the hip flexors. I'm going to sit in the Vajrasana pose, the hero pose, and I'm going to sit on the block. The sit bones go here. Now I like the block this way down. You could have the block quite high up. If you're very tight in your quads, then that would be hero pose. Could you pass me one of those ropes, please, behind me? I'm just looking at the ropes. If you have knee injuries, it's okay, I'll get the rope. One of the problems with going back here is if you have maybe a lot of swelling, arthritis, fluid in the knee, or even hypertonic quads, where the quads are very short and tight because you've never done any stretching, a torn meniscus, then one way is to put a spacer behind the knee, something like this. If you don't have a rope, use a small towel, but that way is to protect your knee. But my knee is fortunately a lot better. So the reclining hero pose is something like this. The knees are together. You don't want the knees splaying too far out to the side. You want to sit between your feet, not on your feet. I'm sitting on my block, flat. You don't really want to have your bum somewhere in the air. You need to be sitting on something. Now, the feet are out to the side. It's quite a strong stretch on the front of the ankles as well. And all I do here is I recline back onto my support, and here I am in a back bend. But to get this action with the reclining hero pose, I need to roll the tailbone down. So my pelvis is going this way. It's not that way, it's this way. the tailbone down, I've got to use a little bit of glutes, a little bit of core, contain the lower ribs. So in effect, this is a core exercise to here. Now that's not too far down for me. I'm erring on the side of caution. I could go lower, but what I really want to do is to show you this support. Because if you're having back problems, you're going to be in a very strong lumbar extension, a back bend. If you do a hero pose right the way down to the ground, just err on the side of caution. You'll also see it done with a belt. Yoga belts come like this, and they're easy to find in any sports shop by the yoga suppliers. So this is the a nice strong belt. It's not the clip belt. It's a belt where I can adjust it. And I'll show you that position again. So pay a little attention to getting the knees in line. I like to go down, perhaps to begin with, on the brick with more height, this way around. I'm going to have my feet out to the sides, so I'm not sitting on my feet. That's a strong stretch on the front shins, the front ankles. But the ankles also can be under a lot of compression, especially for sort of heavy people, all that weight on the feet. So here we are. Now, if I put the belt on, the buckle should be roughly in the middle. Otherwise it's a bit tricky to adjust it. So there's my buckle. So my knees are more or less together. They don't have to be all the way together. There are variations. I could put a spacer between my knees. I'm going to sit a bit flatter, put that brick flat. I guess eventually you get your sitting bones on the floor, but it's nice to have that support. And then here I am. If this doesn't cause back pain, if it does, you stop. If it doesn't cause back pain, the posture is moving back this way. Now that's not very high for me at all, but that gives me lots of support, so it's not going to compromise my back. I'm getting plenty of action in the quads, and I feel the groins opening at the front, like this. There are arm variations as well. There would be this kind of thing. Of course, with a wall behind me, I can't extend my arms back with straight arms, but that would be the position. These arm variations. But again, try not to arch back, don't lift the back. I don't really want any more back bend than I already have. So this would be another variation. The essential thing, of course, is to work the core, keep that tailbone rolling down towards my knees, to open the lower back and not cramp it. That's what you keep working with. If someone pushes on your front hips, iliac crest, they will do the core work for you. And again, with me, I could probably go a bit lower, but again, I'm showing you all this support, and find a support that works for you. You may be able to go a lot further down, and you'll see this on the other YouTube clips with yoga adepts. But I'm not making this for yoga adepts. I'm making this for people as a yoga therapy suggestion for people who have a lot of groin pain because of very tight hip flexors. So I'm just kind of lowering my support a bit, but I'm being very conscious of keeping this the same. Tendency for this foot not to be out as much as the other foot. So adjusting the feet, mindful of my strap. And I'm paying a lot of attention to where the shin bone is. So those shins, one lower leg is not rolling in or rolling out. I want equality in the legs because that means equality, symmetry in the pelvis rather than pelvic asymmetry, because these are very big muscles. And there we are. Personally, I love this because it's also a chest opener. So for me, I want to get the open chest. That's a really nice arm variation, and my head isn't coming too far forward. If I didn't have that pillow behind me, I think this bolster's short and my head would be hinging backwards. So here's my suptavarassana. Wonderful pose. It's often taught at the beginning of a yoga class because it's a pose where you slow down. If you've been running around before you come to your class, this is when you fully arrive. So it's a lovely pose to start with. But it's really for opening these groins. The hip flexor, the psoas, a very, very important muscle in a lot of low back and pelvic issues. It's just such a lovely stretch. Well, I would be here for perhaps a few minutes more, but that's assuming there's no pain cramping the lower back. You should feel it all in your quads, all in the quads, maybe the groins, it's all here. I don't want any compression through the lower back, and that's why this setup is so important, using equipment. I'm of the inclination that there is no shame in using whatever equipment is required and to improvise. It's your body you're working with. Yoga is not a competition sport. It's not about how far you get. It's about what's right for you. Now I'm just going to come back up again. I personally like to come up with difficulty. I'm going to put that brick back on its end lengthways. And now I'm in the seated hero pose for Drasana. And the usual arm variations would be this kind of thing to stretch out the back again. And I suppose I could add in some twists. There's different variations, but these are all variations on a theme. I'm going to take my belt away. Here's my brick. Now, of course, I've just done a back bend, so the other thing would be to come forward. After my arm variations, I could come into a forward bend. My buttocks would lift up, so I could use this support and then go into a forward bend. It's nice to have the head supported, whatever height works for me. So my head is in line with the spine. Don't want to lift up. I want to keep the buttocks earthed, grounded, so I'll use that bolster behind me to do that. Some of you may not need this. You'll be able to keep your bottom on your heels. Don't want the arms too wide. I want the hands as wide as the shoulders to here. Marvelous opening for the upper back. Now the other way to stretch your legs, the legs out. I know I've got equipment behind me, but I'm going to go into a dog, a down dog, and of course I'm a little away from the wall. So there's my dog, and that's the way to stretch out the legs. And that is again another classic move. We keep coming back to basics. The dog, of course, yes, it's for hamstrings, but it's also for the upper back. Contrary to popular belief, I don't have to get my heels all the way down, because if I do that, I'll drop my sit bones. So I like to start with high heels. Eventually they'll come down. And I'm going to walk forward into the Uttanasana, to the forward bend. Why not? It would be nice to have two bricks the same, but there's the Uttanasana. But you use whatever equipment you have. If I want to do a concave back Uttanasana, I might want to use that bolster. And I'm not like this. I'm in a concave spine, and that works for me. Great for the hamstrings. Marvelous. These bricks are behind me here. Some of you, I know the yoga bricks tend to come in the short sizes, the ones you buy in shops. But these would be super long bricks, because again, concave spine Uttanasana. but you work out what's right for you. That would work for me, I think. And the full Uttanasana is this forward bend, we come all the way down. But the equipment is there to feel that you're in the correct pose. Anyway, a little sequence. It was the suptavarassana, the reclining hero pose, that I'm showing you to open the groins. And yes, you can do the lunges. The lunges are the ones that I guess if you're a runner and you're out anytime, any place, anywhere, you can do the lunges, but try to not do this. The tail down. As soon as you tuck the tail down, engage the core, it throws it into the back leg. You'll feel the quad under tension because you'll be moving this pelvis this way, anterior, inferior iliac spine from vastus medialis, this middle quad, and the rest of the quads are from the top of the femur anyway. So that's lengthening the quads. A nice long stretch. Enjoy your hip flexor work. There are others, but I think that's enough for now. So enjoy that. Good luck.